In today's episode, pioneer in holistic healing, Dr. Ken Harris shares with us insights from his book Synchronicity: The Magic, the Mystery, the Meaning. If you've ever wondered about the importance of synchronicity, how to create more synchronicity in your own life, and the 7 different kinds of synchronicities, then tune in to today's episode and soak in some of the life-changing wisdom that Dr. Harris has accumulated over his lifetime. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our show and to our episode with Dr. Ken Harris as we talk about synchronicity. One thing I wanted to start with is if you've been following for the last little while, I want to tell you about a little experiment that I'm starting to do, or I've been doing at least for over the last month. And I still have about another month left to do it. So in the last while, I've been talking about C60 from Purple Power. That C60 is that carbon 60, which is that incredibly powerful antioxidant and has an array of different health benefits because essentially, as most people are aware of now, antioxidants help to mitigate free radical load on the body. So oxidative load on the body, inflammation, that kind of stuff is a cornerstone for chronic disease. And anytime you can incorporate really powerful antioxidants, particularly something like C60, then that can mitigate a lot of those foundational root problems that a lot of people have. Now, one of the things that I've been experimenting with is that it's also very beneficial for wrinkles, and you can use it topically. So not only do you take it internally, but you can also actually rub it on the skin topically. And so I want to show you a study that I was looking at here because I think this is really fascinating. So here's a study that I am experimenting with because this study basically showed that C60, also known as fullerene, is effective against wrinkles. And so a lot of people might know that ultraviolet light in excess can cause damage to skin cells. So it can break down collagen and elastic fibers in the dermis. And then eventually that's where we start to get the wrinkle formation that starts to build up. And so wrinkles is a big deal for a lot of people. And it's really probably a major industry in cosmetics as far as trying to remove wrinkles. And so antioxidants are used in lots of different creams. And so this study actually specifically looked at fullerenes, and they did an 8-week study where they were looking at an 8-week double-blind clinical test. And they looked at 23 female volunteers aged between 30 and 40 years. According to the Japanese guidelines for evaluation of anti-wrinkle creams. And what they looked at was using fullerene topically for 8 weeks. And essentially what they found was quite a substantial improvement in the wrinkle reduction. So they looked at here the percentage of wrinkled area and average wrinkle depth were measured by visual analysis. We found that the percentage wrinkled area was significantly reduced in the fullerene squalene cream treated area compared to the placebo treated area. Now, the other thing that's also interesting is that a lot of times people will use a laser therapy for anti-wrinkle therapy. But the problem with laser therapy is that laser also tends to accumulate free radical load. So the other thing that they also found was that in the groups that used the laser therapy, if they also used the fullerenes or the C60, then that actually substantially lowered the oxidative load on the body from the laser therapy. So you could use them in tandem. So what I've personally been doing over this last while is I have been experimenting with the C60 that I've been putting topically around here. So next year is my big 50. So I turn 50. I turn 50 next year. So, why not? I experiment with it. So I'll rub a little bit in through the sides of my eyes and underneath through here and up and through my forehead. And for the most part, I've been doing it for about a month now, and I definitely can tell decreases in some of the wrinkles on there. Now, I'm also doing it orally as well. So I would recommend you actually do it both ways because there's so many benefits from taking it orally as well. So I would do both, but I'm generally doing about 1 teaspoon a day, and I'm also putting a little bit on topically around my face on every day. So if you want to experiment with that, check out C60. Go to the inspirehealthpodcast.com website. You'll see a link at the top that says for 15% off your order. And when you go there, just make sure you use the coupon code Dr. Loken. That's all in capitals, DRLOKEN. And you can click the show notes here, and there will be a link to it, or go to the Inspire Health Podcast website, and you can check it out. All right, now in today's episode, I talked with Dr. Ken Harris. And if you're not familiar with Dr. Harris, he's been a pioneer in the holistic healthcare industry for decades. He had a very busy practice and a lot of work with mind-body medicine. He's a chiropractor and has a master's degree. Really, really bright guy. And he wrote a book called Synchronicity. And if you followed our past series on science, mysticism, and beyond, synchronicity came up a lot. A lot of different speakers talked about it. It's a big deal. And what Ken really gets into is the different kinds of synchronicity. I mean, we talk about there's 7 different kinds of synchronicities and how they show up. We talk about specific practices to ensure having more synchronicities. And we learn how to actually use those synchronies to unlock a more meaningful life. This is the magic, the mystery, and the meaning in life. And Ken's book is really his own personal journey. And through listening to the stories that he talks about and the synchronicities of his own life, it starts to set a path. It's like when you listen to people and you read certain books, it opens up an awareness that maybe you weren't quite aware of before. And once you do, that opens up so many new potential possibilities for you. So this is a really fun episode. Ken's been around for a while. He's been in this industry for a long time. So I love talking to people that have been really living it for a long time, because it's this blend of sometimes what people know intellectually and what they've really learned experientially. And whenever you can blend those two things, to me, it's just magic. So I hope you guys really enjoy this episode. I had a great time talking with Ken. I think we'll have him back on the show again at some point to break some other stuff down for us. All right, everybody, take care. Now, if you are only listening to this on the Inspire Health podcast, please make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel at Dr. Jason Loken ND. We have a lot of other content on there as well. We're doing live events with different guests. We do follow-ups. We do compilations where we bring different guests back together and we do a group of speakers and have conversations. And I will be starting to do a series of inspired conversations on health, where I'm going to basically start to break down tidbits of things that I think are really important to know, very practical, easy steps in short periods of time. And I want to start to create some content like that for everybody too. Just again, free content that I think is really important to have and to share with people. All right, everybody, take care, and I will talk to you soon. Welcome to the Inspire Health Podcast. Your life is about to get a whole lot better. Have you ever felt like you tried everything and yet still couldn't find the answers or the solutions that you were seeking? Whether you're dealing with chronic illness, physical or emotional pain, I want you to know that your body is the most sophisticated machine on planet Earth. Your body holds unfathomable wisdom. Trust in it and learn from it. Know that there are answers and there are solutions to your specific health challenges. And we will be uncovering all of them here on the Inspire Health Podcast. I'm so excited to be a part of your healing journey. Your transformation starts now. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Inspire Health Podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Ken Harris. Dr. Harris is a chiropractor, educator, lecturer, and author, and founded the Waldwick Wellness Center in New Jersey. The center was a multi-doctor facility providing all natural health and wellness care for 45 years. A pioneer in holistic healing, Dr. Harris first established his practice in 1974 and in 1993 established the Mind Body Wellness Education Center, dedicated to the exploration, understanding, and promotion of the mind-body-spirit connection. Dr. Harris is an honors graduate, magna cum laude, valedictorian, and former professor of New York Chiropractic College. He holds a BA in psychology and an MS in education. He is author of Synchronicity, The Magic, the Mystery, the Meaning, which is a blueprint for understanding the hidden meaning of your own synchronicities. Dr. Harris, what a pleasure to have you on the show.
It's an honor and privilege to be here.
As we were talking about just before we started up here, Taya had actually come across your information probably about a year ago.
Just over a year ago.
And always kept saying to me, we got to connect with Ken at some point to have him on the show. And I think she was, for the most part, really inspired by the messages that you would constantly be putting out on your social media platforms.
Lots of beautiful messages, always uplifting and inspirational, and very much in line with the podcast mission to share information and to bring inspiration to others.
So thank you very much for the work that you keep on putting out in the world.
Well, it's my joy and privilege to speak up when I need to speak up and help people remember who they are.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Yeah, well, that's our only hope, by the way. If people don't wake up to who they really are, not too much is going to matter.
You know, Ken, that's actually a really good point to even start on, because I do feel like this is all part of this whole change that's been going on for the past year anyways. And when we talk about that, even like waking up to who we really are, what does that even mean exactly for people that maybe haven't quite questioned that before, even know where to begin with that? What does that really mean?
Well, most people are identified with their mind or their body or their emotions, their capacities. They think what they think, what they feel, and what they see. But the truth is, they're the invisible force or field behind those capacities. I always refer to as the I am consciousness, which is our real spiritual identity. You know, when people ask me, how old are you? I say, well, which age do you want? I'll give you my chronological age, birth dash to death. I'll give you my physiological age based on assessments from doctors on cardiovascular, etc. I'll give you my psychological age. You could be 80 years old and think like a 20-year-old. You could be 20-year-old and think like an 80-year-old. But I always like to say I'm ageless and timeless. That's my true identity. That's our spiritual heritage. People don't know that. They think they're this persona, this egoic persona walking around separated from the source field. We are one with the source. Whatever name you want to call that source, there is an organizing intelligence which permeates all matter. And so you can't look out in the phenomenal world and not see evidence of, you see the creation, so you know there has to be a creative force. We're the force, like in Star Wars. The force be with you? No, I am the force, and so are you.
It's one step above, may the force be with you. So maybe a second question to that is then, how do people know when they are connected more to that source than when they're more identified with all of those other pieces? What sort of, what feels different? What is different when someone's connected to that with when they're not?
The word ease comes to mind. When you're connected with the field, with the source, you're in a state of ease as opposed to dis-ease. When you're running the show, when you're running the machinery on ego, you're going to bump into a lot of opposition. You're going to bump into a lot of this. And when you're identified with the source field, or it's in the feeling realm, not the mental realm. You're in the flow, as they say. You're in the zone. Life is the unconscious flow of love. That's how I see it. When you're in that love mode, and I don't mean romantic love. I mean unconditional love. It's all good. You know, seeing everyone as myself. My attitude is that you're me in another body. There's really only one source, and with the senses tell us we're separated, but the reality is we have never been separated. That's an egoic filter that we wear. And when you drop your body, you come to realize, hey, what was I upset about? It was me all along. There was no other. That's how I operate anyway. When I meet someone, I'd say, well, here's me in another body. Let me get to know that stranger who's really my friend. There are no strangers, by the way. You know, there are people you haven't met yet, but they're really connected to you in some way. So I operate that way, and I'm learning to stay in a state of unconditional non-judgment. I don't say I don't judge, but I don't let it run me anymore. You know, the ego always says, always comparison, always better, worse, good, better, best and stuff. No, now it's just me in another body. And what can I learn from this other reflection of myself? So that's how I operate. And my life is joyful. I don't have my sister called me up, told me the world was going to end and I won't be going to heaven with her. And I said, Essie, her name is Esther. I said, I'm already in heaven. I don't have to go anywhere. It's not a place. It's a state of consciousness. We're here now. Let's enjoy each other. You know, people are always looking at, they're looking for God out there. They're looking for heaven over there or hell down here. It's a story, folks. It's not the truth.
When you said, I know you, or I am you, it makes me think of Huna Flash. We interviewed for the 15-part series we just completed on science, mysticism, and beyond. We interviewed a Lemurian light shaman by the name of, he goes by Huna Flash, Mautataki. And he spoke of the 9 senses, using our 9 senses to perceive reality and to know each other. And aside from the 5 that we're familiar with, he added, I sense you, I remember you, and because I remember you, I know you, and because I know you, I am you. So that was the That's the ultimate realization that we're not separate. We're all connected. There is no separation.
That's beautiful. I have never heard it described that way, but thank you for sharing that. I do a form of energy healing called attunement. And I reached the state of consciousness on more than one occasion where I don't know where the person began and I ended, or I ended and the person began. The field becomes unified. And you actually have the visceral experience of oneness, not just the intellectual one, but the actual experience of it. And if you ask me to describe that, I can't. It's like you're saying, Ken, what does chocolate taste like? I'd say, here, have a piece. So you have to have the experience to actually know what that state of oneness is. But it is blissful. I think it's the ever-present state of consciousness, but our minds are so phonetically busy, in the outer world that we get distracted. In Stephen Hawking's book, Power versus Force, David Hawkins' book,
David Hawkins
talks about that. Bliss is ever present. It's ever present, but we're just too monkey mind, too busy.
Yeah.
It makes me think of the spiritual experience that your guest spoke about. Do you recall?
Which one? I've had lots of guests that have had spiritual experiences.
No, his book was specifically on spiritual experiences.
Oh, Dr. Irvin Laszlo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you know Dr. Irvin Laszlo, Ken?
No, I don't. No, not consciously, but I'm sure we're connected.
Yeah, he wrote a book on the importance of spiritual experience. And basically for the same, almost very much like what you just said, but it is something that connects you to that unified field. And it's one of those things that you just can't consciously, intellectually, it's very experiential. And the thing is that when you have experiences like that, it's in the experience that the shift in consciousness happens, which then opens you to perspectives without you trying to make something different. You just see the world from a very different perspective. And that's a different sense of knowing than an intellectual knowing. And you just can't change that. You've kind of felt it, and then you can't really go back. You can try to go back, but you've always got a remembrance of what that is. That's
absolutely 100% true.
And
once the head of the baby's out, you can never push it back in.
It makes me think of even, I've had those experiences every single time I've attended Vipassana meditation sittings. So 10-day silent meditations. And at some point or another, one specific example comes to mind. It was during the Christmas holidays is when I would typically go to these sittings. And one day between walking from meditation to lunch, to the lunch area, I caught a glance of the sun gleaming on the snow, and it looked like sparkles. It looked like diamonds in the snow. And I just got so giddy at that moment. And I feel like every single time I actually attended any one of these Vipassana courses, that feeling of giddiness or really tapping into inherent unadulterated joy would spread up at some point when I'm looking out to nature. And it almost makes me think, we have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old and a 16-year-old, but specifically with the younger ones, I see that joy. Like if we let them be, especially if they're kind of running around doing their own thing, for them, it's this reoccurring spontaneous feeling that resurfaces, and it's giddiness, it's joy, it's
wonder,
ecstatic. It's this feeling of being, I think it's having that spiritual experience effortlessly.
If you want to know what heaven is, look in a newborn baby's eyes. They still have the memory. They're still connected. There is no past, present, or future. They're totally in the now, and they're still connected to the source field. There's a great story in Chicken Soup for the Soul series, and it's the story of Sachi. Sachi's a little boy, and he says to his parents, I want to go and talk to my new baby brother. And they were a little reticent because they were afraid he might go in there and give him a little bump because, there's a new member in the family and he would be a little jealous. But finally they acquiesced. They said, okay, Sachi, you can go in and talk to your newborn baby brother. And they let the door to the bedroom cracked open so they could observe what was going to happen between these two brothers. And little Sachi leans into his baby brother and he says, I forget the brother's name. Maybe it was Sachi. He says, tell me what heaven feels like. I'm starting to forget.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the children, they're They have no past, present, or future. They don't hold grudges. They don't see color. They're in that state of total unconditional acceptance. Yeah. But it should be more intensified as we grow older, not lessened. We come in with open hearts. The challenge is, can I die with an open heart? Because of all the things that happen to us during our lifetime, we tend to shut down. But I think the divine design was we should be born and we should ascend. We should go higher, not constantly do this throughout our entire lives.
Yeah,
But we're in a fallen state of consciousness. We're on the wrong channel right now, but things are going to get reset in the right way. So I'm an optimist. As bad as it may look out there, ladies and gentlemen, be patient, because the universe is in control and things are going to have to go through a metamorphosis. The butterfly never would have believed it would become a caterpillar when it went into the chrysalis and became mush. It had no clue what was coming. And I say we're in that chrysalis stage now in humankind, and we're moving through that cycle of change, and not to be afraid of change. Change is necessary.
Yeah, no, we're totally on the same page with you in that regard, Ken, for sure. And yeah, from reading some of the stuff that you posted over this past year, definitely in alignment with a lot of that. Ken, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background as far as what led you to writing a book on synchronicity. What were some of the experiences that brought you to that point on how important that was?
Well, I kept having these sequential synchronicities happening, wild ones, like not just coincidence, like, oh, you say, isn't that cute? You go to pick the phone up and the person you're going to call is there on the other end. That's not a wow. But I met people who literally changed my life. I mean, and doors were open to me beyond anything I could have manipulated. And then I said, well, this is really interesting. It's happening to me. You know what? It must be happening to other people. So I got the inspiration. I said, why don't I write a book, share some of my stories, and then give them a roadmap for remembering and discovering their own. So the synchronicity that put me over the top is the first one in my book. They tell me always to hold the book up, folks. Here it is, synchronicity, the magic, the mystery, the meaning. There's a story of me meeting a former baseball team member 54 years later on a beach by so-called coincidence, which was not. And when that happened, I got really excited. I hadn't seen my friend Richie in 54 years. And he and I played on the same baseball team. And through a series of events, we discovered that, hey, we remembered this story together. So that put me over the top. I said, I had time to write the book. And then I had pretty good recall. I went back in my file, my mental file, and remembered other ones during my journey that had happened to me. So now I'm collecting them from people from all over the world. I'm going to do a series of these books on synchronicity. For example, Synchronicity, How I Met My Spouse. Those are some great stories, by the way. I just met a couple the other day. They were up in Captiva Island, and he's taking a picture of her, and she's taking a picture of him. I said, hey, guys, let me take a picture of both of you. By the way, if you want to have synchronicities, talk to strangers and ask questions. So I take this beautiful shot, and then we start talking, and I told them I wrote a book, and they said, well, this is a synchronicity between us, the lady and the gentleman. I said, what do you mean? Well, we were childhood sweethearts in Ohio. We went to college, we went through high school, we went to college, met other people, we got married. The man's spouse, she unfortunately had passed on. She died from an illness. And the other woman got a divorce. And then they met randomly at a conference where both their companies were hosting, but they weren't in the same company. And they reignited the love and the romance. And they had just gotten married that day, or they were about to get married, planning their marriage, and I took the picture. So now I got an invite to a wedding. But there are many stories of couples, how they meet and why they meet. A lot of people find a job through synchronicity, through networking. You're looking for a job and you meet this one who knows that one, and boom, you got a new job and a new place to live. So we're going to do like Chicken Soup for the Soul, a series of these books.
Yeah, that's
fascinating reading. And you realize you can't make this stuff up. I mean, it's just beyond mathematics. Some of my atheist friends would always say, hey, you think that something is running this universe? I said, oh yeah, I think there's something beyond me that's running the show here. They say, no, that's mathematics, computation, permutation. Stick around long enough and it all happens. And I say, you know what the chances of that happening are? 0 to none. Because you could live 1 billion years and some of these things would never mathematically occur.
well, and to think it too, it's like regardless of what your thoughts are too much on that, I think it comes back to how does it make you feel? Like, does it create more meaning in your life? Does it make your life more fun? Does it kind of add more wonder to your life? So much of that to me is what's really important. It's like ultimately, how does it make you feel, and does it impact your life?
Yes, when it happened to me, I get excited. I get giddy, like you were talking. Yeah, yeah. I actually get giddy. And I say, okay, another one. Thank you. And I'm always aware that I'm not always consciously creating them. You can, through neuroscience, create synchronicity, but some of these, I believe, are just gifted by a higher source, by a higher energy, by a higher intelligence. They're just given to us like marionettes. Ken's going to meet, Tia now, and Tia's going to meet so-and-so, and let's see what happens. So the feeling is one of excitement, joy, and thankfulness. I don't think we're walking here by ourselves, folks. I really believe that you have angels, guides, you have some other energy field personas working with you and through you, guiding you. So synchronicity is like the spiritual gyroscope, keeps you on your path, keeps you on track. Because we all tend to go off on eddy currents. We wake up, we go back to sleep. We wake up, we go back. Believe me, I had a few of those in my life, and they're not fun. If you wake up and you have a realization and then you try to forget it again, usually you suffer a little bit. And I've had my share of suffering like everybody else. So when you wake up, try to stay awake and alert and stay awake. But we're being guided. We're being guided. We're not here by ourselves. I've had some incredible out-of-body experiences and travels and so on, but that's a whole other show.
Yeah, well, we got a show down the road here that might fit into. So, Ken, let's break down then what exactly synchronicity is from your perspective, and what are the different types of synchronicities? What are the different ways that synchronicity can show up in people's lives?
Well, I've come to discover that there are 7 distinct types of synchronicity. And for those of you who are interested, on my website, you get a freebie. It's called a user-friendly guide for categorizing and understanding synchronicities. This is a freebie we give to anyone who wants to stay connected to me and the work. So let me just run down the list here. It's very simple. The 7 types of synchronicity: precursor, deviation, expansion, message, manifestation, opportunity, and artificial. And each one is distinct unto themselves. They're not replicated. Opportunity synchronicities usually come about when you meet someone and a whole new opportunity emerges as a result of that interaction. Sometimes people get stuck. They don't know which way to go. Should I go left? Should I go right? They don't know how to make a choice, so they have to deviate from their normal routine. And in deviating from your normal routine, you meet other people, you ask questions, and you get answers. The universe is intelligent. It's ordered. It's not haphazard. It's not flotsam and jetsam on the top of the ocean. And we're not randomly bumping into each other. No. There's a design to life, and life can be trusted. So my advice to people: everyone you meet is a student or teacher to you in some way. Listen to what they're telling you. Ask them questions. Listen to their answers. Sometimes they're going to tell you what to do next, and sometimes they're going to tell you what not to do next. So advice is always being given to us. So just stay aware that the universe is putting you in that person's path for a very specific reason. I don't believe in randomness at all. There's an exchange of energy and information with everybody you interact with. I had a beautiful deviation synchronicity about 3 weeks before I came down here. My wife and I, we did the 5 languages of love. Are you familiar with the book?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, we would actually do courses.
Yeah, I'm married 52 years, and I discovered something. My wife perceives love as acts of service. If I take out the garbage, if I vacuum the floor, if I go food shopping, that's an act of love, and I'm happy to do that. But my act of love is touch and tell. She's got to pat me on the head and say, "Good morning, Kenny. Do you know that I love you?" I got to hear it. I got to feel it. Anyway, she asked me to go shopping for her. And I said, fine, I'd be happy to go. So I took the food list, and en route to the supermarket in another town, there's a bank, a branch of my bank. I have a bank that I keep all my royalties, not too many, but royalties from my books. linked to that bank. So the bank is right next to the food shopping store. I said, you know what? I've never been in that branch, but let me go in and check. I hadn't checked it for about 3-4 months if I made any money from Amazon. By the way, they're not very generous, Amazon. They don't give you a lot of money for your book, folks. Please buy it on my website. Anyway, so I go into the bank, and because of COVID, now I'm deviating. I'm going into it's my bank, but I've never been in that branch. So I figure I'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Go food shopping, go to the bank. No one's in the bank but the teller and me, because people are afraid to come in the bank. They're all going through the drive-through. And I said to myself, I'm not going to go through the drive-through because I'm going to have these reports printed. It's going to take some time. So I actually park my car and physically go into the bank. I go up to the teller. I tell her who I am. I'm here to get the last 6 months of my statements printed. Could you do that for me? And she said, oh, absolutely. But it's going to take a little time, so you might want to wait. And I look over in the corner of my eye, and there's one woman sitting in the corner of the bank. And I said to her, to the teller, is that lady the officer of the bank that I would want to talk to about maybe getting what do they call it? A HELOC loan, health equity loan for my house? She says, yeah, that's the one you would talk to. Now, there was no one online. So I said, babe, why not kill 3 birds with 1 stone? So I go over to the woman while she's printing me my statements. And I sit down, we have this wonderful conversation. She's in her mid-30s, very lovely. We go through the whole terms of conditions. And I said, unfortunately, you're not competitive with my other bank. So I'm not going to be able to do business with you today for this HELOC, but thank you so much. And then I glance down on the desk and I see she's reading a book, a paperback, but it's upside down. So I'm pretty observant. I said, what's the name of that book? And she flips it over, and here's where it gets interesting. She says, well, I'm at a point in my life, I need some clarity. I don't know which way to go with my next step. And the name of the book is called The Clarity Cleanse. That's the name of it. But it's not a nutritional cleanse, it's an emotional clarity. It just so happens the man who wrote the foreword to my book, who's a famous doctor, is the author of that book. His name is Dr. Habib Sadeki. He's out of California. He's got a place called the Beehive of Healing. He's an incredible doctor. He's an anthroposophical physician, treats a half of Hollywood, and how I met him is a whole other story. So I said, this is a synchronicity. I said, the book you're reading is written by the man who wrote the foreword to my book. She says, really? I said, yeah. She says, you got one? I said, well, I always keep a few in the car. So I ran out to the car. I come back in. I sign the book. She's so happy. And then she says to me, I just got off the phone before you came in today. And my friend said I should go to an energetic healer, that might give me more clarity on my next step. Do you know anybody who does that, Dr. Harris? I said, we're looking at her. The next day she came in, and now she's been a client of mine. So you can't make this stuff, all because I deviated from my normal routine. I never go in the bank. I always go through the drive-through. I never went in that branch. But that day, the universe, she had a manifestation synchronicity. She had an intention and desire to find someone to help her. The universe sent Ken. And it just so happens when I almost was chuckling when she said, do you know anybody that does energy work? So that's how it works, and it put us together. And now we're really good friends. And as a result of, our sharing, she's got more clarity on her next step. She knows exactly where, what, and how, what she should be doing. But you can't make that up. I mean, that she would be reading the book of the man who wrote the foreword to my book, and she needed an energy healer. And there I was, presto, I appeared.
Wow, amazing. It makes me think of the topic that we took up with Dr. Christiane Northrup, Magenta, and Huna, and the last roundtable that we had. The word courage came up quite often. And it makes me think of, within this context as well, it's almost as if when we do take a chance and act in ways that might not be familiar to us or comfortable for us, but we're feeling called to, so we have the courage to take action and go to those places, or go to that bank that we've never visited and step out of our box. There's the opportunity for synchronicities to come up that much more frequently and that much more readily.
Yeah.
I agree. I think synchronicity is ubiquitous. It's happening all the time to everyone. They're just not aware of it. I just had one on the beach 2 days ago. Gentleman's in a wheelchair. And I went by, and 2 weeks ago, I spoke to someone else in a wheelchair, and I thought it was him, but it wasn't. So we engaged in a brief conversation. I said, did I speak to you 2 weeks ago? He said, no. But then I said to him, I took a chance. I said, sir, can I ask you, what put you in a wheelchair? Why are you in this wheelchair? that took some courage, because people say it's none of your business. That's private. No. And he begins to tell me, and he starts out with the words, well, I have an incurable condition. And then I said, well, sir, I don't know if you know this. There are no incurable conditions. There are only incurable patients. The word incurable means to cure from within. You want to share with me what happened to you? And he did. So I was just with him before I came here. We're really simpatico now. But the bottom line, here's the synchronicity. He tells me he was a famous, I don't want to mention his name, but he was a famous trial attorney. And he's been before the Supreme Court of the United States 4 times. This guy's a heavy hitter. And he put people in jail. He's very famous. And they made a movie and a book about him and blah, blah, blah. And I said, it's interesting. I said, I'm going to be studying with this guy, Dr. Joseph Dispenza, next week. And I started sharing a little bit about Joe's work. You know Joe Dispenza, right? And his whole meditation trainings. And he said, well, I'm going to check it out. I'll let you know if I would be interested in doing a follow-up. And then he says to me, here's what he says to me. He says, I live in Columbus, Ohio. I'm down here for the winter. But I used to run a mind-body wellness center. I said, well, you're an attorney. What were you doing? He said, oh, no, I owned it, but other doctors worked it. And I said, when did you start this? He said, in the 70s. I said, really? Yeah. He said, we were the only one in all of Ohio to have a mind-body wellness center. And who put us out of business was Blue Cross Blue Shield, because they got wind of the concept, the model, they put it in the hospitals. I said, it's funny that you should say Columbus, Ohio, because when I started my mind-body wellness center, I flew to Columbus, Ohio, and I visited a mind-body wellness center. It was his center. I know you can't. So this is over 50 years ago almost. So you can't make this stuff up. So now we were hugging and high-fiving on the beach. And I believe I'm going to help him. I believe I'm going to help him to get out of that wheelchair. Mm-hmm. But all because I had enough courage and enough, inquisitiveness to say, sir, what put you in a wheelchair? Mm-hmm. I didn't know why. I could have said an accident, genetics, this. But when he says incurable, when I hear the word incurable, if I had a patient come to me and they told me 2 things. If they tell me it's incurable, I would try to encourage them to see that there is nothing that is incurable. It's to cure from within. And if they also told me that they're being punished by God, I would ask them to leave my office. And they would look at me like, what do you mean? I said, if you think God is the author of why you're sick, you think I'm stronger than God? I'm not going to go against God. So I can help you. I'll give you the names of 3 other doctors who'll be happy to take your money. But trust me on this, God always wins. So, I used to keep a little plaque on my, you get a kick out of this, a little plaque on my desk. And it's the bumblebee story. Are you familiar with the bumblebee story? All right, here's the short line of it. The bumblebee, according to all the laws of aerodynamics, through the relationship of its wingspan to its body mass, should not be able to fly. Mm-hmm. But underneath it says, but the bumblebee doesn't know it, so it flies anyway. Mm-hmm. We don't know. Human being, we're operating in the dark for the most part. We put all these limiting beliefs and concepts that are just passed down generation to generation that are not true. They're not true. And it takes a lot of courage to break out of that mold and to start to put a different filter on and see possibilities. Mm-hmm. Whereas most people, they go to a doctor, they're looking, I think in many cases, they're looking for hope. They're looking for someone somewhere that can give them a gleam of hope, to get out of the situation that they're in. And that's the job of a doctor, is to be an inspirer, I believe.
I think you're totally right, Ken. I actually think that's where sort of healing and medicine is going to keep transmuting into as we go along, because we know how important the interconnection of practitioner and patient, or practitioner and client is. It's actually a paramount part to creating an environment for healing to actually occur. And it's sort of been one of those things that conventionally has kind of been removed in some way to maintain a certain hierarchy, guise of like objective lens on what's going on, but it's removed all of the connection that's actually essential for creating an environment that's going to open up the door to healing to take place.
I agree 100%. Yeah, the relationship between a doctor and a patient is the best medicine. If a doctor, and if you don't think you can help someone, then send them to someone who you think could help them. because don't go against your own authenticity as well. You know, there are a lot of doctors who are trained on material medicine. They don't understand the concept of energy changing matter. They just don't get it. And that's fine. They want to do a material way of doing it. But there are other ways to do it, for sure. And the indigenous peoples knew this. The medicine man was the physician priest. Yeah. He was both. And he didn't refer him to the psychiatrist for this and to the internist for that. He was a one-stop shopping. You know what I'm saying? He had material means, but he also had spiritual. It was a spiritual setup. We call it response. If there's response in a patient to the doctor and they don't have their own faith, I tell them, borrow some of mine. I know you can be helped with this. And if they can accept that, then they relax, because then all the fear and the doubt. If there's fear and doubt in the healing relationship, no healing. If someone starts questioning, I hope, maybe, it's not going to heal. You got to eliminate all doubt and uncertainty. And the doctor has to be clear about, you know, what his limitations are as far as how he can offer help to a patient. There were some things that, you know, I referred people out for things I knew that I had a belief I couldn't help them with. And I was honest. I said, listen, I can do this, but I'm not, it's beyond my bandwidth to do that. So I'm going to send you to someone who can help you. By the way, that's why I started the Mind Body Center. I realized early on as a chiropractor, and I was a really good chiropractor, that the structural alignment alone was not enough to get the people back to balance. They needed help with nutrition. They needed help with meditation. They needed help with transformational type classes. So I had 30 different people come through my center teaching, because the doctor really should be the teacher, but I couldn't do it all. I was expert at what I did, which was remove the physical subluxation patterns. But no, I hired other people to help me, because, you know, healing is a group effort. Mm-hmm. No one doctor has all the answers for anybody. Yeah, and there were times I told people to go to consult with medicine and surgery. It's appropriate at different times and cycles. You know, it was early on. I was a little discouraging them from going anywhere else. But as I matured, I said, you know, there is a time and place for all things under heaven, including my own. I had to have spinal surgery. Can you believe that? A chiropractor, I saved hundreds of people from having to have spinal surgery, and I wound up having to have it myself. Now, there was a lesson in humility. Literally, I had to crawl into the neurosurgeon's office and ask for help. And by the way, when he did his magic, I kissed his hands. When I went back for the follow-up visit, I said, give me your hands. He was like, what do you want my hands for? And I literally kissed him, because for 6 months, I hadn't slept through one night from intractable pain due to a tumor forming in my spinal column. And chiropractic wasn't going to, in that time and place, fix it. I had wonderful adjustments. I did prayer, I did meditation, but my answer for that particular condition was neurosurgery. And the guy was, thank God, he was expert at what he did. So we need all healing arts, you know, and this is the tempered Ken. Believe me, when I got out of school, if they were dead, I thought I could raise them with an adjustment. I was so on fire, you know, with the entheos. Enthusiasm means to be on fire with God. You know, if you met me, trust me, if you met me when I graduated, within 10 minutes, you'd be lying down and I'd be giving you an adjustment on the top of a car, because I believed every man, woman, and child on the planet had to get adjusted immediately. Otherwise, Mother Earth was going to spin out of orbit and they were going to abort the whole show. But that's the kind of enthusiasm I came out of school with. And because of that, of course, I attracted large numbers of people, you know. And also I was the professor at the college, so I was blessed. All the students brought me their families. I didn't have any, you know, the starvation period. I bypassed it, because, you know, I was a lecturer at the college for a year, and, you know, I was the authority. So one guy brought me 40 members of his family, one of the students. Of course, when he graduated, he took them all back. But I mean, I had an instant practice. It was joyful. And I had babies. I had them newborns to 102 years old. I never treated necks and backs. No. I was there as their, quote, family trusted doctor. Mm-hmm. And people would come to me out of trust the first time and say, what do you think, Ken? And I said, well, let's see. You know, so, anyway.
You know, Ken, you said a couple of things there that I think were important. So when you were talking about how you ended up having spinal surgery, and you were mentioning something about Dr. Hawkins before with Power versus Force. And I remember I was a longtime student of Dr. Hawkins, and he would say, I remember him saying in one of his books or in one of the lectures I was at, and it's, you know, it's always easy to poo-poo something until you actually need it. So whether that's a painkiller or it's this or it's surgery or it's something else, it's like you can always say, it's a bad thing until you're in a position where maybe you actually require it. And then all of a sudden things change very quickly. And that often goes through my head a lot of times. It's why, and you said early on, a lot of times we function in the dark. I often think we know this little piece of this really big picture, and the best we can do is try and do the best we can with being in alignment with where we are, but maintain this space of openness to allow our box to kind of keep expanding with new information as things go along and with new experiences, and know that, and probably even know that what we currently think and feel in a certain way may change at some point down the road with new information that we allow in.
I would say certainly is 100% open to change. Nothing's fixed. We live in a dynamic universe. And so, don't confuse me with the facts. My mind's already made up. That's a bad place to be. If you think you know everything about everything. The challenge for me with the spinal cord, I said, if it was my arm I broke, I'd go. If my shoulder, I wouldn't hesitate. But it had to be my back. The thing that I helped so many other people with who told me they needed surgery. And the other thing was I had seen a lot of failed back surgery in my practice. And so, I had to overcome tremendous fear that if I walked across that door sill, maybe I wouldn't be walking back out. But I found the right one at the right time through synchronicity. He was a great doctor. And I insulted him when I walked in, and he didn't even flinch. I said, how's this for a starting conversation? I don't want to be here. And all I've seen is all your failures. And he didn't flinch. I mean, can you imagine that? I'd say, well, if you don't want to be here and you think we're going to fail, then I'd say, yeah, there's the door. No, he said, well, what can I do to help you? He was very patient, And he said, I have a solution, but I'm going to tell you to try to go and have another procedure done. If it doesn't work, we'll go back in. When I saw my x-rays, I had the healthiest lumbar spine of anybody I know. All my discs were patent, the IVFs were open, but I had this growth inside the neural canal on the thecal sac, direct pressure. And the only way that puppy was going to come out was to make a hemilaminectomy, go in there and pluck it out. And he did. In 3 hours, I walked out of the hospital. I didn't even stay overnight. I mean, and that's after not sleeping for 6 months. I could not sleep through it. I couldn't lie. I couldn't sit. The pain was intractable. It made me really have compassion for people with neuritic pain. It's one of the worst pains you can ever bear. I mean, heart attacks aren't too good either, by the way. I had one of those last year. So, I said to them, I said, hey guys, I got my lesson. I know medicine's helpful. Now I got to have a heart attack to prove it again. And the guy saved my life. The paramedics, my next book, by the way, it's crazy. It's going to be called Extra Innings, a Reprieve from Sudden Death, because I should have been dead. 80% of the people die with what happened to me right on the spot. They never even get to the hospital. So again, angels, guides, but everybody was in the right time at the right place. And you're not going to find a more thankful guy than me. I mean, I wake up every day in bliss because, the doctor said to me, I don't know how you got here alive. Mm. She said that to me. I had 100% blockage in the artery. And she said, most people would just episode and down they go. But I found the right doctor again because the hospital close by to me was the Scripps Medical Center, and they were on divert. They couldn't take me. And she told me, Ken, you don't know this, but if you had gone there, they were not capable of doing what we did here. You would have died. And so they had to go north on the highway, these gentlemen, the paramedics and the firemen. And here's the piece that really makes me want to cry. They hit a traffic accident on Route 5 going north in Southern California. They crossed the divide and they went north on the south side to save my life. Mm. They put their own lives in jeopardy because they knew I didn't have time. So, and a complete stranger. Here I am. They didn't have to do that, and they did it. And I am very, very. And I went back after I got out, and they had tears in their eyes, as I am now. And I gave them a copy of my book, and they said, "Hey, Doc, we didn't think you were going to make it, and no one ever comes back and tells us. So thank you." They said, once we drop you at the ER, we never know if you live or die, but we know that you didn't have the time. So we risked our own lives to save yours.
You still had work to do, Dr. Harris.
I feel blessed. I am a blessed man. You won't hear any complaint. Complaint is, I wasn't always this way. It takes a while. I'm 75. I'll be 75. So it takes time, to temper and mature and to mellow. And so I'm just the one happy camper, I guess.
Hmm.
Gosh, one of the questions that comes up around that, sort of before when we were talking about just being open to all these different sorts of treatments that are available and not sort of putting limitations on all that stuff. But it's interesting because like I find like what usually happens, and it almost seems like it has to happen to some point, is because there's so much information usually in one sort of almost one narrative that's kind of going and going and going and going, then it's almost like to try and bring information around. So say that's simply about maybe nutrition, right? Maybe there's so much stuff around certain medications and big pharma and marketing and all of this stuff. So everybody knows this part of it so well that it almost feels like in order to try and bring awareness to something else, you've got to be really trying to work hard to push it up, to bring that information out, to try and get it out to people to hear. I guess I'm trying to find the balance of like this place of maintaining openness around everything. But at the same point, it seems like sometimes certain information tries to get pushed down and you have to work hard for a period of time to try and get that information back up. So it's even in the eyesight, the viewpoint for people to even know that it's there.
Yeah, there's an appropriateness for all modalities of healing. The time and place is critical. I mean, there's no one healing art that's better than another. They're all necessary. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I don't want to get rid of the emergency rooms in hospitals. There's no substitute for Western medicine in that area. We would take objection maybe with the pharmacological model because we know it's Peter to Paul. You fix one thing, you imbalance another. So, I would say food is your best medicine. I would say that, I would be pushing people more to changing their diet than taking a pill. But, there's a time and a place, and I learned the hard way, I guess. I had to be humbled. Humble pie was not part of my diet. I was a pretty tough kid from the Bronx. I had to be to survive, and I wasn't taking any prisoners. But at this point in my life, it's all God. It's all necessary. I'll never say never again, because the very thing you say I'm never going to do, you usually wind up having to do. I had two friends who had gone previously for spinal surgery, and I remember being so judgmental. So what's the matter with these guys? Why don't they try a different approach, a different technique? What? And sure enough, universe said, this is why. So it's good to stay open, humbled. All modalities have a time and place. I don't think there's anyone better than the other. There's the appropriateness, and sometimes it's concomitant. You need all medicine, and you need nutrition, and you need healing and prayer. They're all valid. They're tools. They're just tools. I'd say they keep you alive long enough to wake up to who you are. I mean, that's the point of keeping someone going. I mean, why keep them going? So they can have this realization who they are, and they can die whole. We didn't talk a lot about synchronicity, but that's okay. Everything is synchronistic in some way. The way you found me, Tia, you saw my things, you called me up, and I knew right away from your website that this would be an interesting conversation. But again, the universe is intelligent. It put us together at the right time, at the right place for the right reason, and just to be aware, awake, and alert to that. That's all. And as I say, see everybody as your student and teacher to you. There's no hierarchical in the spiritual world. We're all learning. And as my friend Ram Dass would say, hey, Ken, we're just all walking each other home. That's all.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that, seeing everyone that we meet. I would say even, our family and close friends as student and teacher.
Which are often even harder than strangers that you meet.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Ram Dass would say, you want to know if you're spiritually enlightened? Go home and spend a week with your family. and you'll say, yeah, but they push my buttons. He says, yeah, because they installed them. They know exactly where they are. And he also said, Ram Dass was one of the most influential spiritual teachers for me. Energetically, he changed my field. I mean, I went into an altered state of consciousness having met him. And what a sweet, sweet soul. And Wayne Dyer was another one, Deepak Chopra. I was blessed to get to know them all and work with them in an intimate way. So that was a given to me. I was very thankful to receive those synchronistic events to make it happen. It's all in my book, how I met them, why I met them, and so on and so forth. But it ain't over. They say it ain't over till the fat lady sings, and then it's never really over anyway, folks, because this thing we call death is an illusion. You will drop this physical form, but who you are is not the body.
Mm-hmm.
If there's anything more reassuring than that, I don't know what else I could tell you. Relax. All the drama, it's not that important. Don't get too excited, because everything is in change. Everything is in flux. Everything is fluid. And the universe itself is evolving, and we're part of that evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And we're really here just to, I don't want to sound religious, but we're just here to love one another. That's what we were told. Just be kind, compassionate, and loving to each other. Even the people who vote differently from you, even the reds, the blues, and the white, who cares? And what the sad thing is, our country now is like this. We're at a precipice point. We're a house divided. And I'm going to say, those of us who think we're enlightened, we're going to have to reach across the board and embrace the people who think we're other and we're dangerous and all that. So we're going to have to go deep. I'll speak for myself. I'm going to have to go deep and get beyond my judgments of what I think people should and shouldn't be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kamudia.
Vaccine business and everything else. We're all in the same boat. It doesn't matter if you're on the top of the boat or the bottom of the boat. If the boat goes down, the boat's going down. We're all going with it. It's all of us and none of us. If any remain bound, none of us are going to get free. We're on spaceship Earth. We're part. I believe that you and me, maybe we're part of the crew. We came to help to guide the ship a little better, and other people don't know this. They're just passengers. But you're not just a passenger, and neither am I. We're not just visiting here. We came with a very specific intention, and that is to show up at this time of transition as the Earth goes through its changes. And Holy Mother Earth has been patient with us. I don't know how much longer she's going to be patient, but she's been very patient with what we've done to her, when you think about it. Isn't it interesting? We have poisoned the air. We've poisoned our water, right? We have poisoned the earth, but we haven't poisoned fire. We cannot poison, those are the four forces of creation: air, water, earth, and fire, right? So the first three have all been polluted, but not the fire. And fire is a symbol of love. And that's how the world's going to change.
I love it. That's beautiful. Ken, it reminds me of one of the other things that Huna Flash had said. He talked about Kimuria, and he said that the essence of that is sort of two things. It was hold them in the dark until the light comes, which really grabs me when I really kind of allow myself to feel what that means, but hold them in the dark until the light comes. So not even sort of trying to be the light for somebody, but can you actually hold them in the dark until the light comes? Like, that's really the essence of that sort of unconditional lovingness, to just stay, right? And the other part was, like you had mentioned at the beginning, that we're not really ever strangers. This separation is an illusion. He would say it would be like you'd see the person and be like, oh, it's been a long time. I see you. I remember you. Come here, give me a hug.
Yeah, and this whole thing about separation and not being able to hug one another, it's very sad, because we were hardwired to hug.
Yeah.
They say a 30-second hug, oxytocin's released.
Yeah.
The feel-good hormone, right? And that people now are seeing other people as biohazards. Don't come near. It's sad. I feel sorry for them, really, in many ways. I have compassion that I give out my business card sometimes. Some people go like this. They're afraid the virus is going to jump off the card and kill them in the next 30 nanoseconds. I said, no, it's okay. They prove now that the virus doesn't live on surfaces. After a year, they finally tell people, you don't have to spray your food anymore. It's sad. I'm laughing, but it's really sad.
Yeah.
I know people who have not left their house in a year, and they have their food delivered and it's sprayed outside. They're already dead. And there's no rational talking.
Mm-hmm.
No, I know.
Talking them in or out of it, because the real fear of the virus, if we're going to talk a little bit about it, is not the virus itself. It's the fear of mortality.
Mm-hmm.
They equate the virus with death. If you get it, you're going to die, which the statistics say no. 98% of people are going to get it and get better, or many are going to get it and never even know they had it in the first place. But that rational fact doesn't compute with people. They don't let that sink in, and they go into a fear state. And
Mhm.
fear is separation. The worst thing you can do for your nervous system is to go into fear. It disconnects the coherent fields between brain and heart.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Then your immune system tanks. I don't care how much vitamin D3 you take, how much vitamin C, how much zinc. If you're in a fear state, you're going to disconnect the fields and you'll lose your coherence. And then the macrophages and the T cells, they're not going to be produced in the hematopoietic centers of the bone. And so you're going to be sick. They'll look at you and sneeze at you and you'll get sick. So we got it all backwards. We're putting the emphasis on the wrong place. We should be teaching people this, on national TV instead of, I don't watch television anymore. I just don't.
Yeah. Same with us.
How could you? It's poison. It's really poison.
Yeah.
What's coming across the ear, because it only instills more fear in people. Now that the people, all they keep hearing is about the variants and how that they're going to get the boosters and you better be careful. And it's very sad. Down here in Florida, by the way, it's not so sad. People are pretty free. I go shopping in places you don't have to wear masks and people are singing and dancing. It's a whole different ball game than upstate in New Jersey where they lock down everybody. So it's two different planets almost.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you said you were in Florida, I was like, that's probably the place to be there right at the moment, as far as where you are.
1,000 people are moving here every day. I'm thinking of it myself because I don't want to live on the draconian lockdown situation. That's not health enhancing. No. We know that the strongest field in the human body, electromagnetically, is your heart. And if you're in a total state of heart, it's not good for the pump. It's a lot more than the pump. It's a neuroendocrine organ, but it's a lot more than the scientists know about. The heart is our connection to soul, by the way. It's through the feeling realm that we connect to God. Yeah. It's not through the head. You can read all you want in all the textbooks, all the Bibles, all the Qurans. You're not going to find God. But when you're in the presence of the one who dwells within, you'll feel it. And that's how you know that you're in the right place.
Yeah.
I tell people you're going to recognize your friends by how you feel in their presence, not by what they look like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it brings full circle back to when you talked about experiential. It's like, these are the types of things that you just need to have a felt sense of, and it's, this brings down even the whole concept of truth. I often talk to people about, especially in this past series, was how do you discern truth from falsehood? Because we're kind of in a world where it can be very difficult for a lot of people there's so much different information and misinformation and disinformation and you name it. I mean, all sides of it. And so I get that it essentially just leaves people in a state of confusion all the time. And then I feel like my concern, or the concern that I would have, would be that when you're in a state of confusion, it's very easy to then give your power outside of yourself. I just feel like then we look for somebody else to make decisions for us. And it's not a healthy field to heal in or to progress in any way when you're in that sort of disempowered state from confusion. So, Ken, from your experience of stuff, how do you discern truth from falsehood?
Well, I ask my body, how do I feel when I hear the information? Mm-hmm. Now, some people will be in the throat chakra, some in the heart chakra, some in the solar plexus, some in the bowel. But everybody has a place in their body where they know they'll have an expansion of their energy or a contraction of their energy. So anytime you're faced with a decision, close your eyes, ask the question, and then ask your body, how does it feel in your body? Do you feel light and happy and joyful when you think of that choice, or do you feel, I would say majority of people feel either in the solar plexus or the heart, and so I ask my heart and I ask my belly, how does that make me feel? Regardless of what the head says, because the mind will lie to you. The mind is an incredible, it can talk you in and out of everything, but the body will not lie to you. I used to do kinesiology. I'd ask them the question. They'd say one thing, but the body says no. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do the same.
There was a disconnect, right, between what they were saying and what they were feeling. Yeah. And that creates tension in the physical body. And that's why chiropractors are so helpful, because we can relieve that tension through the adjustment. But unless they get coherence back in head and heart, with no more buts. I feel this, but I think that. When the but's in there, you're in trouble. You're in conflict. And as long as
Can you speak a little bit more about that, Ken? Can you speak a little bit more about the kinesiology for just listeners who are not familiar, who might not be familiar?
You can do what is called the muscle testing. I use something called contact reflex analysis, which I would check the circuits. So we would ask the person to close their eyes and think of a question that they have a decision to make, and think of one way of going or the other way of going, but do it independently. And you would actually test the muscle strength. I always would interpret a yes as a strong resistance, and a no as a collapse. And it wasn't based on muscle strength. It was amazing, because you could give someone a cigarette, let's say, and they would always collapse, no matter what they were thinking, how much they loved it or wanted it, didn't matter. The body says no. The body has an inner wisdom. You know, it's a cellular memory, and you can't, it doesn't lie. The body will not lie, but the head will. So, you know, if you're in a conflict, and you hear people say it all the time, I know this, and then the but comes, but I feel this. And I say, your work is to get the knowing and the feeling aligned. Once you can get them aligned, then you can move ahead. You know, you got clarity. You'll have clarity. And the body will help you to do that by asking the body, how do I feel when I make this decision?
Mm-hmm.
There was a guy at Sony Corporation. He was the head of Sony, I think. Chopra tells the story. You know, his board of directors would meet. They pitch everything to him. He says, I'll be back in a half hour. And they go, where are you going? He says, I'm going next door. He'd go next door. He'd get a glass of water. And if he could drink the water, if he could swallow the deal, he did it. And if he couldn't get the water past his throat, if he spit it up, no matter how much they told him it was a good deal, he didn't do it. Simple.
Oh, that's so interesting. You know, it makes me think of food and overeating. And oftentimes, you know, we have these certain addictions that we go to within our life, within our daily routine, because we're actually having trouble with certain choices that we're having to make, or with certain decisions that we're being faced with. And instead of actually being with the feeling and sitting with discomfort within that feeling, so that we can gain the clarity necessary to make the better choice for us, we instead stuff ourselves, whether that be with wine, whether that be with, you know, all sorts of liquor or food or chocolate, like whatever your vice is, right? But it just makes me think, you know, in those instances, when those urges come up, when you're faced with something challenging, can you actually take a few deep breaths and go for a walk in the park or by the ocean, or, you know, whatever is accessible to you, but just spend some time in nature so that you can kind of come to a place of calm to be able to discern between what you're being confronted with and what's challenging, and what you ultimately need to make choices around.
Absolutely. You know, Eckhart Tolle says the worst addiction is thinking. All those other addictions, you know, food, sex, money, but the worst one is overthinking. And I've had people, they could talk themselves in or out of anything. It's amazing. They could go this way, and then 15 seconds later they're this way, and that will wear out your adrenal system, by the way. If you lose the focus of the single eye, the adrenals, a double-minded man or woman is unstable in his or her ways. So the adrenals, they blow out, and then, you know, the cascading effects physiologically in the body. So yeah, what you're saying is absolutely true. If you want to get clarity, go into nature. The first law of the 7 laws is the field of pure potentiality in Chopra's book, and you have to spend time in nature. It's just, I spend time every day in the woods or by the ocean. You know, and don't be listening to your headset, by the way, when you walk. Become observant, look around, you know, pay attention to where you are, breathe. And the answers are there. We don't have to go digging them up. The quieter I get, the more I know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so true, Ken. For when we were talking about the coherence, or the heart-brain coherence that Ken had talked about, go to drjasonloken.com, because I have a meditation on there that's called Wisdom of the Heart, or Accessing the Heart's Wisdom. And from there, it takes you through the step on creating heart-brain coherence. And then it takes you to the next step where you actually ask the heart questions and start to get familiar with that intuitive kind of feeling response to when something is supportive or not so supportive. And I always find those are really important things to come to. And especially whenever you're making, you know, bigger decisions on something, don't do them when you're feeling fearful or worried, because we know that you don't make good decisions when you come from that place. So slow it down. Like Ken says, get into nature, get into a heart-brain coherent state, and then ask yourself the same questions and see actually what the body tells you is often different than what the brain tells you. And really important to kind of get connected to that. And one other thing around the kinesiology, I incorporate a lot of kinesiology before in my practice too. And I remember doing a course on neuroemotional technique. We were looking specifically for for emotional connections that were shutting down or short circuiting certain or creating certain patterns in your life. And I remember at the course, and you can get up and be a demo for the instructor. And so anytime I get to do a course, if I can be a demo for, then I'll go get the treatments done while I'm there, because it's like, why not? And so it comes up, and I had just finished going through a really difficult breakup, probably about 6 months prior to that. And I was kind of feeling like I was in a place where I was ready to move on to and sort of open back up to another relationship again. And so I went up and the question, so you would ask a question, then you'd basically pose a question to the body and then see if the body agrees with it or doesn't agree with it. And so the question was, I was first saying, okay, I want to know, like, am I ready to be in a mutually loving relationship? And she said, well, let's just start with, are you ready for a relationship? And I'm like, okay, I am ready for a relationship. Weak. And it's like, yep, there you go. And so then part of the process is it tracks back. You kind of find where those patterns initially got set up. You start to kind of filter through and work through some of the different patterns. But then it was shortly after all of that then I ended up meeting Taya. This was like 8 or 9 years back. And then we eventually ended up getting married. So it definitely cleared the blocks, which then in my mind opens the door sometimes to more synchronicities to fall into your life. Now,
maybe an example
I'd like to,
of the block.
well, so for me, that block was it was kind of tied back to my upbringing, and my parents got divorced, and it's not really an uncommon thing, but a lot of stuff that we develop growing up and things that we hear and situations that we see, it's not good or bad. It's just we ingrain in those, and they sort of get sticky. And so how we perceive things often as a child is different than how we perceive them, or we could perceive them as an adult, but we still tend to use the same template that's not so supportive, but maybe was at one point when we were kids. So in the process of kind of bringing awareness to that, and then sort of just allowing that to, basically it was of being loved, right? And so when that started to clear, then all of a sudden the doors open where then love was allowed to come back in. And all of a sudden, then I found, Ken, that then the different synchronicities in that department all of a sudden started opening up. I met someone who happened to know both of us, randomly at a coffee shop that I hadn't seen for like a year. It just same sort of ideas, and they just line up. So what's your perspective on that as far as for opening up the door to allowing more synchronicities into one's life? What are some of the things that might be required to sort of open that space so that they start to show up even more? Maybe not that they're showing up, but that you become more aware of the fact that they're there.
Well, I think they're there all along, but you're not aware of it, so you're too busy with dealing with your stuff. Most people at some level either have shame or self-hatred. They really, they were told, mother, father, teacher, preacher, culture, how bad they were, what all the bad things they were doing. So Anita Morjani wrote a book, Dying to Be Me. Are you familiar with Anita's book?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's all about, she went to the other side, came back, hey, dummy, all you got to do is love yourself. You're going to get better. So most of us, we shut it down because we got this internal dialogue going on that's really not healthy. And it keeps us, diverted from what's right in front of us. So if you want to open yourself up to more love, I would say start loving the real self. Start doing the work here. And then that will vibrationally open the field to receiving the love that's coming to you all the time. But we have the shields of deflectiveness, go away. I hate myself. I don't love myself. Don't come near me. I'll prove to you how bad I am. Blah, 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 blah. So when you can get through the self part of self-love, self-acceptance, I think the field opens wide. The thing that keeps the field out is our own judgments, our own criticism of ourselves. If people are merciless sometimes to what they say to themselves, they would never say it to a friend. But and many times I would tell someone, I would bless them and say how much I love and appreciate them, and you'd see their head go down because they go to shame, because what they're saying inside, yeah, but he doesn't know all the bad things I did and all the bad thoughts I have, and so on and so forth. Because who hasn't? We're connected in the field. The subconscious is an unholy mess. That's why I don't promote psychological counseling to too many people. Spiritual counseling, yes, but to go and try to take an eyedropper and empty the ocean is what you're trying to do in psychotherapy in many cases. It's this, we're all connected in the field, and we all let A2 Brute, don't point any fingers out there. Everything you're accusing everybody else of, in some way you've been guilty of yourself. So you need to learn to collapse the process and not be quick to judge. At least that's been my experience. So the field is open. My teacher said it can. People are in prison. They got the keys in their pocket. My job, your job as a healer, is to inspire them and encourage them to let themselves out of jail. Just put their hands in their pocket and out they come.
Nice. I remember Dr. David Hawkins saying once too that when he was he would see some, because he had a big psychiatric practice for a long time, in I think in New York too. That's there somewhere. And he said he would see some people that were really like in bad shape, like really kind of gone. And he said he would see spontaneous healing sometime by just literally seeing them and really seeing them, like seeing that Atma kind of within them. And it was in the reflection of that then they saw themselves. And it was then that the spontaneous healing opened up.
Yeah, it's magic. That's part of the magic of healing. And there's no one size fits all. Every case is different. I didn't treat everybody the same way. You have spiritual discernment of. Early on, I was a little bull in the china shop. I had these great revelations, and I was going to teach everybody. I blew half my practice out every time I came back from another revelation. Then I learned to be quiet, to be discerning. And, it's not what you say; it's when you say it in the process. People can only eat so much at different points in their cycle. So we're not there. Here's the best thing: shine the light on their path, not in their face. So
like
they can
that.
see the next step, okay? Because otherwise they get blinded. They can't take it. And love is an intense emotion. I had received my first energetic healing session back in 1970s, and there was a man and woman. One was working in my crown chakra, head, my heaven, and the other was working on my feet. And I just started to burst out crying. I couldn't take it, and I asked them to stop. And then I saw 12 beings appear in the room. It was like, I was new to this. I didn't, it was all hocus pocus to me. I said, I didn't even know that I had stepped into a whole other doorway. But I actually asked them to stop because I didn't have the tensile strength to hold that kind of love. Like they say in the Kundalini experience, if you're not ready, you can go crazy.
Mm-hmm.
In the Kundalini, if it rises and you really haven't done the work, you can go insane. So love is the powerful emotion, probably the all-powerful one. I don't love anything higher than love. What was it, 700? When you're in love, you're at a 700 frequency, and when you're in fear, you're down at 10 or 20 or something.
Yeah.
You did the gradation, right? Love was on top and fear was on the bottom.
Yeah, he'd have the whole scale of consciousness. He'd have shame would be down at around 30, where 0 would be like death. So really low. And so meaning basically there's a very low field of power to really make changes in your life very much. So it's why when you're stuck in shame, it's hard to kind of dig out of it sometimes. And then each level progressively moves higher. And he would say, it goes up to 1,000, but he would say essentially that unconditional love would be at 540. And then upwards of that, you'd move into like joy, peace, and then these different stages of enlightenment. But he said across the board, like, unconditional love should be what we should be striving for, because he said it's doable, it's attainable, and that's all that's really required.
Well, that was my experience being with Ram Dass. My parents loved me, but there were conditions. Being with that man, it was unconditional. So I had the actual experience of it, and that's why I say my field got changed. I had a whole new understanding of what it was to be in the presence. Here's a man sitting in a wheelchair, in diapers, half paralyzed, in total bliss. In total bliss. It's like, most of us wouldn't be sitting there in total bliss. We'd be complaining, why did it happen to me? I want to get out of here. No. He was a sea of glass, tranquil. It was beautiful. It was a gift. I being with him, and we cried together. We actually embraced and cried in that space. I could still feel it. I mean, that's how, they say a minute in the soul can last you a lifetime.
Mm.
A minute in the soul will last you a lifetime. And if you get some of those moments with teachers along the way, it's a wonderful thing. It's a blessing. And I've received them, and now I'm here to give them. I mean, that's my consciousness. I've already got the blessing. I'm here to release the blessing because the baton's getting passed. I mean, I'm 75. I'm not going to be around in this body forever. I'm going to be around forever, but not in this form. So I want to, every day is joyful. How can I help? That's my question. Every day in every situation, how can I be a blessing here? What can I do to make it better?
Well, I think
and life is easy that way. It's fun. I only wish I knew this when I was 20.
Well, I think you talk about that too in your book around that no one's really sent in your life by accident. They're either a lesson or a blessing, right?
That's one of the principles of synchronicity. There must be about 30 of them at the end of the book, but that definitely is one of them. So we show up for a reason, and some we show up with some people for a season, and other people for a lifetime. Some people come in your orbit like the sun and the moon, like the earth and the moon, that they follow each other, and other people like Halley's Comet. They only come around every 88 years. And it's okay. Don't hold on to anyone, by the way. We're not here to grab onto anyone. We're just here to experience each other's gifts. That would be heaven on earth. If everybody came and gave their gift, we all have a unique signature. If we all release that into the world, we wouldn't have to die to go anywhere. We're in it already. That's the secret, God hid it. God, whatever that means to you, hid itself. It's herself, whatever self you want inside. And that's the last place we all look, right? Everybody's out there looking for the magic. In healing, everybody wants the magic nutrient. Tell me the one thing that's going to make me well. Well, there is no one thing. Mm-hmm. I'm happy to see you smiling because you guys know that.
It's beautiful.
Oh yeah, I know it. We've experienced it. I see it too in patients all the time as well. I mean, it's part of the fun being a clinician too. You get the honor and the experience of sharing these moments with so many different people, and you start to see I think a certain level of just how things work over time too. I know personally the things that I think almost always, I mean, you definitely get certain people where depending on where the treatment is and what's appropriate for the person at that specific time in their life that resonates with them. But it's like so much of the really profound ones are when that person has just remembered something about themselves or something, they've tapped into something that's much bigger than what they thought, or they cleared something that was there for a long time. Like it just spontaneously kind of moved on and they've moved to another level around things. I mean, it's like the kind of stuff that makes you teary when you're, together going through that experience.
And to be honest with you, there are patients who will come back. You'll see them years later, weeks, months, years later, and they'll say, Doc, you said something back in 1922, whatever it was, that changed my life. And you have no idea. Because when I do public speaking, sometimes I get off the stage, I don't remember anything I said because it was said through me. I just released, I lost consciousness of self, and I opened, and the divine, whatever that is, comes right through and gives the audience exactly what they need. I never prepare a speech. I never write a speech out. I stand, actually, it's quite an interesting technique. I will stand before an audience and not say anything, sometimes 2-3 minutes, and just look around the audience and make contact, innate to innate contact. And there's my material. My audience bought my topic with them today. So then I just give them back what they're looking for,
Nice.
And to read a paper at a symposium. That's why you asked me, do I have questions? I said, ask me anything you want. It's in the moment, and I won't remember what I said anyway, but you're recording it. So you can edit this in any way, shape you want, but it's fun. This has been fun for me. I mean, I'm having a good time. I don't know about you guys, but haven't you had the experience too, Jason, that a client comes and they start telling you what you're going through?
Absolutely.
It's like, okay, how do they know? And you don't say a word, you're listening. And it's your issue. You're working with the same pattern. And here's the mirror. It's a reflection. It's amazing. Every therapist has had this happen, from psychiatrists to massage therapists to chiropractors. It happens. And it's just another evidence that we're all connected. The universe is giving you back what you're trying to solve in your own life.
Yeah, I would find that so often, or something that I had just really processed.
Right.
Same thing. Then the patient would come in with a very similar, and it's almost like at that point, and it could be either way, where you're in the middle of it, and it's like, okay, yeah, definitely something I'm working with, and it's sort of. But then if it's also really fun when you've just finished or coming to an aha moment around it, or you've worked through it to a point, and then the person comes up and it's like, this is so great because it feels like this resonance where now you get to share kind of your journey a little bit and share some of the what's worked for yourself anyways.
Right. It's evidence that we're connected. I mean, there's
Yeah.
no, I'm involved with the thing called the Mankind Project. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
No.
It's called the New Warrior Training. There are 30 or 40,000 men who have gone through this very specific training where men like myself pay to go and help men going through the training. 35 of us are on faculty and 30 men actually go through the training. So it's more than 1-to-1. But there's a process where we do shadow work, you know, the Jungian shadow work. And so you stand in a circle, as the staff does, and the initiates, the men going through the training, they ask them, look around this circle and pick the energy of a man who carries the energy of your father. A lot of it has to do with the father wound. So I'll never forget this. So this was the last man up, and he looks around and he says, this one, he points to me. So they asked me, would you step in as a surrogate and like Marino role playing to be this man's father? I said, sure. So there's a very specific process, but here's what happened. Every wound I did to my own son, that man's father did to this boy. And it was as if my own son was talking to me that day. They had to de-roll me when we got through. I couldn't believe what was coming out of this, because my son will probably never do the training. I've tried to encourage him, but you know how it is with family. I don't need that. You need it. But all the things that I had unfortunately done to my boy growing up, this man's father did to him. And here we had an opportunity holographically to heal it.
Yeah.
Now, how could that have happened? That's a super synchronicity that he picked me. He didn't know me. He didn't know my name. He just looked around the room, but he was discerning that this man would be a good surrogate for me to have this outworking. So I had to heal him with my boy as a result of that. Two surrogates. So life is magical and mystical.
Yeah.
That's why I named my book, Magic, Mystery, and the Meaning. By the way, each person has to figure it out for him or herself. Don't ask somebody else, tell me the meaning of this synchronicity. You have to do that work. You have to connect the dots. You know, you have to make the relationships yourself, because only you know you better than anybody else. You know, no one else can tell you the answer. You know, I always get a little upset for people always running to somebody else, tell me the answer. You know, whether it be an astrologer or a tarot card reader or something. I believe we know our answers. We're just unwilling to look. You know, it takes courage, Tia, to look, but I believe we know. I believe each person really knows, and they play this game of amnesia. I don't know. No, there's avoidance, there's fear to open and look into Pandora's box and see really what's going on.
Yeah.
That's the only way you're going to get free. That's the only way you're going to get free. It's going to take courage. You know, courage is of the heart, by the way. The word courage comes from the French, the heart. And so to look, you know, to shine the light into the darkness and not be afraid what you see. Ram Dass used to say, hey guys, when the demons come at night, and they come at night usually, folks, all those bad thoughts and those bad things, invite them in for tea. Don't try to run from them. You know, face them. Goliath, David and Goliath. Look at them and say, oh, okay. And then you get to the point where they won't move you anymore. The more you run away, it's like a child who's having a tantrum. They want your attention. No, turn around, face them.
That's a great point, Dr. Harris, that you just brought up with you have the answers, you have the capability to move through this. Because I think one of the patterns, and I mentioned, Jay and I talk a lot about this, and at the beginning of this pandemic, I told him, I feel like everything that we've experienced, the traumas that we've gone through, the challenges that we've had as a humanity is just being amplified at this time in history so that we can see it very clearly for what it is, from the fear, from, placing authorities outside of ourselves, from feeling helpless, from not trusting each other, like all of the stuff that we're having to navigate through right now that is really hard. There's no doubt about that. It's really challenging. but I feel like it's amplifying that much more so that we can see it clearly for what it is in order to then be able to clear it out, so that we don't repeat it. But as far as one of the main patterns that I'm seeing is placing authority outside of ourselves. And we're seeing it still within the field of spirituality, with channelers, with psychics. I mean, to a certain degree, that's wonderful because there's the reminder of what if, and then those codes or ideas come in and you're able to work with them to get out of the rut, so you're able to empower yourself. But outside of that, like, it's great to feel empowered, it's great to feel inspired, but you don't want to, again, go back to the same pattern of believing that somebody else has the power but you don't, because that's, again, going into disempowerment. So I think that's really key what you're mentioning, is you do have all the answers. You just learn some tools, learn some strategies. Like, your book is really great for that, because it does give some specific strategies to work with, some ideas to work with and work through. But ultimately, it's going to come through your own lens, which has been tainted with your own blessings and lessons within your own life. And that's going to hold meaning for you. That's the treasure that's there for you to now excavate.
I agree 100%. We need to be held accountable for our decisions and not ask anybody else what we should or shouldn't be doing, because that absolves you of any accountability and responsibility. Tell me what to do. And if it doesn't work out, well, you told me to do that. Look what happened.
Mm-hmm.
No, we're not victims. We're creator beings. And we have the power, if we're open and honest with ourselves. We know what we need to be doing, and no one else has to tell us. That's my belief anyway. That's why I always avoided guruism. Now, when I met Wayne, I got pictures of Wayne and Ramdas here. I never saw them as gurus. I saw them as equals. I saw them as compadres. I didn't go to Ramdas asking him what I should be doing. No, I didn't even know why I went. But what it turned out, that my friend who had passed away, which we both knew mutually, appeared in the room. He came and visited with us. It was crazy. I mean, I know people are going to listen to this. They say, well, this guy's a little weird. But no, he appeared. And he said, basically he told me, hey, Ken, I'm fine. I'm moving on. Because he got killed in a traumatic accident in India. He was a bhakti yoga guy. His name was Shamdas. And he was part of the Omega Institute. And I love this man. I just loved him. And then he gets hit on a motorcycle in the episodes and dies. In America, he probably would have been saved. So I had some unprocessed grief. And being with Ramdas, the grief came up and I started to cry. And then I realized, that I never really metabolized that feeling of loss, because I did a little bit of spiritual bypass. We do that sometimes when we lose someone we love. We say, oh, it's okay. They're on the other side. They're fine. Yeah, but, we've all experienced grief. I mean, how could you be a human being and not feel grief,
Mm-hmm.
for someone you love? Are your parents still alive, both of you, or not?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you won't grow up until you bury your parents.
Mm-hmm.
You'll know when you stand at their gravesite, you'll know what that loss feels like. Particularly in my case, the mama. The mother is the key at the heart of the family usually. So being a human, I am a being. Yes, I am a spiritual being having a temporary human experience. I get that. But the human part of me still I've stood at a lot of graves in the last 10 years. A lot of my friends are on the other side. And I feel like I'm still here to carry in the torch, get the job done, finish the race. So, but I call on them. I call on their spirits. So
That's beautiful, Ken. Ken, I was listening to something a while back and they were talking about what it means to be connected to pure love. And it was kind of getting to the point that it doesn't mean being nice all the time. It doesn't mean being always in a blissed out state or in avoiding certain things. It's being able to do what needs to be done and to say what needs to be said. And I feel like you really embody that, Ken. And it's been a real honor to be able to talk to you about that. And I can tell from the stories in your book and from just the openness, the curiosity, the willingness, the courage that you kind of live your life with, that keeps opening you up to these magical experiences. I feel like that's like that in itself is such a blessing for people to see, because when they see somebody else doing that, it opens up the door that maybe they can do something like that too. And so that's where really the gift of us living our own light shares with everybody else. So I want to thank you so much for the work that you're doing, for the book you've written. And where can people learn more about the work that you're doing? Where can they either learn more about your practice? Where can they learn to find the book, Synchronicity?
Well, I'm retired in active practice, so I'm not looking for business in that sense. They can find anything they want to know about me on my website. It's Dr. KenHarris.com. If you Google Ken Harris, Dr. Ken Harris, there's 100,000 of us. I don't know. It's such a common name. So I couldn't get DR. It's DOCTOR, KenHarris.com. And I put out a monthly newsletter for free. They'll get this user guide, which is a synopsis of the whole book. The user guide, we give this out as a freebie to educate people. And I also do long distance healing sessions with patients. So I've done it all around the world, because in that level of consciousness, there's no space and time. We go into the field. So I actually will merge with people on the other side of the planet, because their openness to receive what I can transmit. But all healing, basically, in the end, by the way, just so you know, I keep getting calls here. All healing is self-healing. No one heals anybody else. In the end, we're facilitators, that's all. We open the door, we point them in a direction. People have their own answers. If you're a real good healer, and I'm learning to be better, listen more, talk less, and ask good questions.
Wonderful.
So thank you for having me. I appreciate this opportunity, as always, to share some of my experience and advice. My wife says, don't give the advice until they ask for it. If it's unsolicited, they don't want it. And the bottom line is, the worst vice is advice. Each person has to figure it out for him or herself.
Mm-hmm.
Taste the waters, taste the chocolate, folks, and be thankful. If I had to say one thing at the end, if you want to live a life of happiness, be thankful.
Yeah, sage advice, Dr. Harris. We'll keep all those links in the show notes, so go and check it out. We'll put a link to Dr. Ken's book, and if you can, purchase it through the website. It makes a big difference for people when they can purchase it through the website, as opposed to some of the big sellers like Amazon and stuff too. So
Jeff Bezos, I know why he's the richest guy on the planet. He's worse than the banks. But listen, I didn't write the book to make money. Honest to God, I didn't. I was very successful. I wrote the book to wake up consciousness. To give the gift to, hey guys, realize you're being guided. That's the intention behind my book, to remind you of your own synchronicity.
Synchronicities was talked about a lot in the 15-part series, and we talked to Lee Carroll, who channels Cryon, who often has a really beautiful message, and they talked a lot about synchronicities. It's come up a lot.
Dr. Todd Ovokadis.
Dr. Todd Ovokadis, yeah.
Magenta Pixie.
Lots of people. So it really is an important thing. And I actually feel like as we kind of slow things down and consciously want to connect to those and pay attention to them, they really will make dramatic changes in your life if you allow them to. And read Dr. Ken's book, because it's kind of like a story guide on how you can sort of start to incorporate that yourself too. You get a feel for it reading through the stories, and so then that in itself will start to open you up to being able to experience it too.
Thanks for the advertisement.
Thanks so much, Ken. Well, that was awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to invest in your health and well-being. Since this podcast is brand new, reviews and subscribers are so vital for us to get off the ground and share this really important information. So if you found this information valuable, please post a review and subscribe to the podcast so you'll get our newest episodes. Also, if you know of someone who would benefit from this, please share it with them. You can also find us on Instagram at #InspireHealthPodcast. If you have a question that you'd like to be addressed, direct message me on Instagram or leave a comment on one of my posts. I would love to hear from you. And you can grab our show notes and free resources for each episode at inspirehealthpodcast.com. So be sure to go online and check it out.